What's good? It's Woog. We've got a title fight taking place on a Friday. O'Shaquie Foster, 21 wins and 2 losses, will be defending his WBC Super-Featherweight title against Abraham Nova, 23 wins and 1 loss. O'Shaquie Foster became the WBC Super-Featherweight champ as a significant underdog against Ray Vargas, the 126-pound champ who was going up in weight to fight O'Shaquie Foster for the vacant 130-pound title. And O'Shaquie Foster, just like that, a name that people were not too familiar with, or those that were familiar, probably saw him as a pretty decent fighter, but not anybody who would be a title holder, let alone a title holder who now has one successful title defense. But yeah, it all happened with O'Shaquie Foster, who outboxed Ray Vargas, and then boy did he have to earn that title defense against Eduardo Rocky Hernandez in, I would say, one of the fights of 2023. And that 11th round was certainly one of the rounds of the year. So in that fight, which O'Shaquie Foster went to Cancun, Mexico, and I was wondering about this because O'Shaquie Foster went from PBC, that's where he earned the title against Ray Vargas. Then he signed with Matchroom. So then he goes to Mexico to fight the challenger. I was kind of puzzled about that. Like, why, as the belt holder, are you going to go into enemy territory to fight an opponent who the crowd is just going to erupt every time they let their hands go? But that's what O'Shaquie Foster did. And again, it resulted in one of the most thrilling fights of 2023. And on that broadcast, I think the team was Corey Erdman, Claudia Trejo, and Gabriel Rosado, who I actually like doing a lot of the color commentary. But when you watch that fight, you see the type of pressure that Rocky Hernandez was applying. And as good a boxer as O'Shaquie Foster is, because he's a good boxer who can switch to southpaw, he's got broad enough shoulders to where he could use his body to kind of move the opponent around, create space, and do a lot of very crafty technical things that keep him in the lead per exchange, and is also able to use a very effective jab, straight right hand, and then again, when he switches to southpaw, he's got a nice straight left hand, throws some nice uppercuts as well. So he's got a pretty well-rounded skill set. But he was not able to effectively handle the pressure that Rocky Hernandez was applying in a pretty small ring. So O'Shaquie Foster would try to move around laterally, jab, but Rocky Hernandez just stayed in his chest and was just letting his hands go. He almost fought like I'm not going to say a poor man's, but a poor man's Mauricio Lara. Maybe not as hard a hitter, even though Rocky Hernandez has a very high KO percentage. So maybe he does hit about as hard as, it's tough to tell. But O'Shaquie Foster was clearly uncomfortable with the pace, with the rhythm of the fight, with the inability to control range and everything like that. He basically was forced to fight. And that fight against Rocky Hernandez brought every bit of fight out of O'Shaquie Foster, to where I think that the scorecards were a little bit bogus. Like going into the 9th round, I think one judge had it even, and then the other 2 judges had it something like 80-72, meaning they gave just about every round to Rocky Hernandez. So going into the late rounds, it wasn't getting too much better for O'Shaquie Foster. I think Hernandez kind of threw away the 9th and then compounded the volume in the 10th. So I think Rocky Hernandez won the 10th round. But then the 11th round came around, and pretty early in that round, O'Shaquie Foster went to southpaw once again, caught Rocky Hernandez with the left hand, changed the whole fight. Rocky Hernandez almost went down right then and there, but then he backed up. He got beaten to a pulp, and then he ended up catching O'Shaquie Foster. And then that final minute, I would say like a minute 20 to a minute for the rest of the round, was one of the biggest thrill rides you'll be on, because they were just rocking each other back and forth. They were both eating huge shots that were snapping their head back that made you think, oh, is this guy going down? Oh, is that guy going down? But you had to give that round to O'Shaquie Foster, because for some of that round, it looked like he was about to stop Rocky Hernandez in the 11th. And then going into the 12th round, because keep in mind, that 11th round, there were no knockdowns. As much as it looked like O'Shaquie Foster might have been on his way to stopping Rocky Hernandez, he didn't drop him. So by the scorecards, going into the 12th, O'Shaquie Foster still needed probably a couple knockdowns. Or again, if you're looking at those scorecards going into the 9th, he needed a knockout. He needed to finish the fight. He was not about to win this on the scorecard. So they go into the 12th round. He hurts Rocky Hernandez again. He ends up dropping him twice and then finishing him. So this ended up being a dramatic finish to a fight that, for much of the fight, it looked like the belt was about to change hands. It looked like O'Shaquie Foster couldn't do anything to mitigate the pressure, and that Rocky Hernandez was about to be your new WBC 130-pound champ. So, I would stop short of saying O'Shaquie Foster got away with one there, because I usually attribute that to when a fighter doesn't fight well across the 12 rounds, leaves it up to the judges on the scorecards, and ends up getting like a gift decision, like what I believe Teofimo Lopez got recently against Jermaine Ortiz. He got away with one there. O'Shaquie Foster did what he had to do, and he actually finished the fight. So, damn, his nickname is Ice Water. And he came through in the clutch when he needed to dig deep because he's not looked at as being a particularly deadly puncher, but he finished a fight in the 12th round, and that was a fight that he needed to finish. So that fight made me respect O'Shaquie Foster that much more, and it also made me respect the hell out of Rocky Hernandez. I can't wait to see him fight again, because that definitely grew his stock. But O'Shaquie Foster was able to successfully retain his WBC belt, and if he didn't get the respect that he might have merited with a win over Ray Vargas to become champion, and even before that, he beat Yakubov, where if you don't know about Muhammad Kuja Yakubov, that was a very tough fight. That was in Dubai, right before O'Shaquie Foster's title opportunity against Ray Vargas. Go rewatch Foster versus Yakubov. And before that, he beat Miguel Roman, who had fought guys like Miguel Berchelt and who actually beat Orlando Salido. Granted, it was like a 2017 version of Orlando Salido. But yeah, O'Shaquie Foster's now fought a few pretty damn good fighters. Maybe not the names that would jump off the page. Maybe not like A-level guys, even though you could argue that Ray Vargas at 126 is an A-level guy, or at least close to it. So if O'Shaquie Foster didn't get the respect after the win against Vargas, I think he got a lot more respect after that first successful title defense. And, like Teddy Atlas says, because remember, I was saying that O'Shaquie Foster wasn't a name that over the years, recent years, just jumps out at you like, oh yeah, that's a superstar. Keep your eye on him. Not so much, but like Atlas says, Teddy Atlas, the famed trainer who, came up under Customato, I think it was him who said this, and I think he actually attributed it to Customato, but he said something to the effect of, when you become a champ, you become 30% better overnight. So there's definitely more of a glow around O'Shaquie Foster than there was a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And lucky for O'Shaquie Foster, his next opponent, Abraham Nova, doesn't apply the same type of pressure that Rocky Hernandez did. So Foster basically went from PBC to DAZN, Matchroom DAZN, for one fight, and then he signs with Top Rank. And I, quite frankly, don't know how Abraham Nova became next in line to fight for the WBC 130-pound title. Now, not that Abraham Nova isn't a good fighter. He came up, he was very promising. He ended up fighting in basically a prospect contender versus prospect contender fight against Robeisy Ramirez. Robeisy Ramirez, after a few competitive rounds, knocked Abraham Nova out in the 5th round. And it was one of those pretty scary knockouts, like a pretty devastating knockout. So since then, Abraham Nova has fought twice. He beat Adam Lopez via 10-round decision, and then he knocked out Jonathan Romero in 3 rounds. So that loss to Robeisy Ramirez is still Abraham Nova's only loss, but he's only had 2 fights at 130. Yes, he won them both, but he's not like a Ring Magazine top 10 130 guy, but you often get title challengers who aren't top 10 in their division. But when I size up O'Shaquie Foster versus Abraham Nova, first of all, their measurables are very similar. O'Shaquie Foster's 5'8", Abraham Nova 5'9", 72-inch reach versus 72-inch reach. So very similar in height and in reach. But O'Shaquie Foster does switch stances. Again, he's not a knockout artist. Abraham Nova, he's not a super aggressive fighter. He's a pretty good counterpuncher, but I feel like he could get lulled into fights. That's what Robeisy Ramirez did. I thought that Abraham Nova looked really good in the first 2 rounds. I thought that he won maybe those first 2 rounds. Robeisy Ramirez was able to start getting him to exchange from the range, from the distance that Robeisy Ramirez wanted him to exchange from, to where, as they put it on the telecast, fight shorter than his actual height. He basically brought Abraham Nova over to him to where then he could land those sneaky left hands. And, Robeisy Ramirez was looking to kind of dip and then launch a devastating left hand. O'Shaquie Foster, again, when he switches to southpaw, can throw a mean left hand. So I wouldn't be too surprised if we see a lot of Foster fighting from that southpaw stance. Abraham Nova, I think, jab for jab, tit for tat, will be very competitive with O'Shaquie Foster in spurts. I think that he's got comparable hand speed. I think he probably has comparable punching power. In terms of boxing acumen, you will see it in spots like Abraham Nova when he fought Jonathan Romero, or when he fought William Encarnacion. He can sit back, let you throw the first punch or two, and then counter very quickly. Look at how he first hurt Jonathan Romero. Sometimes he'll take a step back, let you overexert with one punch, and then within a blink of an eye, come back with the counter. So O'Shaquie Foster, from a conventional stance, I could see Abraham Nova throwing a right hand on top of O'Shaquie Foster's jab. I can also see Abraham Nova backing Foster up in spurts. Again, Foster moves, but he usually doesn't move as much as he moved against Rocky Hernandez. I look at that fight as being kind of special circumstances, because it wasn't just dumb pressure that Rocky was applying. He was putting his punches together very intelligently. He was changing the speed on his punches. He was throwing uppercuts. He was changing the angles, changing the timing. So it's not like he was just coming forward and throwing a predictable punch pattern style of combination. No, he would step to one side, throw some punches, jab his way in, duck, go to the body, go up top. Rocky Hernandez was really mixing stuff up, and that's what made it difficult for O'Shaquie Foster round over round over round. Again, he doesn't have to worry about that with Abraham Nova. I think that this will be a more measured pace, and I think that that measured pace will serve O'Shaquie Foster well. What I'm wondering is, will he be able to kind of tame Abraham Nova to where, because Abraham Nova, again, he will get aggressive in spurts. He will usually voluntarily get more aggressive than O'Shaquie Foster will voluntarily get. Again, you've got to kind of bring that out of Foster in certain cases. So if O'Shaquie Foster ends up outboxing Abraham Nova in the early to middle rounds, maybe Nova starts putting his foot on the gas and then, runs the risk of getting hurt by walking into something. Or maybe he kind of capitulates and he kind of agreeably boxes to a decision loss to Foster. Now, one thing that was interesting is that betting wise, this fight is more lopsided than I see it. I actually look at Abraham Nova as having a really good chance at this one. I mean, this is a huge opportunity for Abraham Nova. And if these two guys were to have fought, I know Nova was at 126 and O'Shaquie Foster was at 130, but if they were to have fought like 2 years ago, basically before Foster fought and beat Ray Vargas, you might have gotten more people to think that Abraham Nova, because of his reputation as a nice prospect at the time, and O'Shaquie Foster's got 2 losses earlier in his career, people might have thought that Abraham Nova was going to beat O'Shaquie Foster. Like, he might have even been the betting favorite if they were to have fought a couple of years ago. But again, a lot of things change within a year and a half to 2 years. One guy became a champ with a successful title defense. The other guy got his lights put out against Robeisy Ramirez. But those things aside, from a skill set standpoint, again, Abraham Nova is a very talented fighter. Like, look at the way that he beat Blue Nose, Adam Lopez. He looked like he could have outboxed him for 20 rounds. There was definitely a skill gap and a talent gap. So when I look at these betting odds, I'm seeing O'Shaquie Foster going off as an 8-1 favorite, a minus 800, with Abraham Nova as a plus 650. So he's a 6.5 to 1 underdog. I just don't see that. I wouldn't be totally surprised if, like, by the 4th round, 5th round, it gets to be, nervous time because Abraham Nova is getting the slightly better of the exchanges. But I'll say this, O'Shaquie Foster really impressed me in terms of his heart and his focus. He seems to be a champ who truly appreciates the amount of leveling up that he's done. And he looks like he's still not satisfied, that he's still locked in, that he's still focused. I mean, he comes from a pretty rough background, and he got into trouble legally earlier in his life to where he recommitted himself to boxing and basically has totally gone all in, to where he's, by all reports and testimonials that I've seen or read, he seems like he's totally locked in and committed, and that he is dedicated to the craft. And again, he showed me that he's got a ton of heart. A lot of guys would have lost their belt against Rocky Hernandez on that night. O'Shaquie Foster didn't. So I don't think he's going to drop the ball with this one. And even if from a purely athletic and talent standpoint, even if he's matched by Abraham Nova, I'm going to err on the side of O'Shaquie Foster on this one. And out of these two guys, Foster has gone the 12-round distance twice. And again, he's been in the 12th round a third time, that third time being against Rocky Hernandez. Whereas this is the first fight for Abraham Nova that is scheduled for 12 rounds. So I'm not even sure if he knows how to manage his gas tank over the course of 12 rounds. I was this close to picking O'Shaquie Foster by stoppage because I kind of think that his punching power might be a little bit underrated. I don't think it's great power, but it's pretty good power. And again, Abraham Nova's only fought at 130 twice and hasn't been in the 12 rounder. But I'm even going to give Abraham Nova the benefit of the doubt from a talent standpoint and from an IQ, a boxing IQ standpoint. So I'm going to take O'Shaquie Foster to win, but unlike what I was about to do in picking him to actually stop Abraham Nova, I'm going to pick O'Shaquie Foster, but I think it's going to be by pretty impressive decision, to where I think that the technical gap between the two will widen in the second half of the fight, to where O'Shaquie Foster will win this one by a few rounds. So I'm going to take O'Shaquie Foster via unanimous decision against Abraham Nova. But yeah, let me know what your thoughts are on this fight. Who are you taking to win this one and how? And also, politically speaking, now that O'Shaquie Foster is on Top Rank fighting on ESPN, it looks like Emmanuel Navarrete is looking to go 135, which I don't love. Like, to be honest, around the time, even before he fought Liam Wilson, around the time he fought Eduardo Baez, I was really hoping that he would settle back into featherweight and fight there for a few fights. But then he went up and he didn't look great, but he got the stoppage against Liam Wilson. We will see over the years how good Liam Wilson truly is. But then he looked very good, Navarrete did, against Oscar Valdez. And then he looked more beatable in a very good fight with a ton of punches. I think they broke records in how many punches they threw and landed between Navarrete and Conceição. So I don't love Navarrete hopping weight again to 135. And I think he's going to be fighting, or there's a purse bid, I believe, that's been ordered to have him fight for the WBO, the vacant WBO 135-pound title against Dennis Berinchyk. Not Ivan Berinchyk, but Dennis Berinchyk. So it looks like Navarrete is going to be relinquishing his WBO belt, I think, at 130. I hope he ends up staying. Like Ray Vargas went up to 130, came back and defended, or he's going to defend his 126-pound WBC title. I hope Navarrete sticks around at 130 for just a bit more. I would love to see Navarrete versus O'Shaquie Foster, but you've got Joe Cordina, who's on DAZN, which Foster left. You've got Lamont Roach, who beat Hector Garcia. Lamont Roach is now the WBA 130-pound champ. And then you've got other guys, Oscar Valdez, Robson Conceição, Shavkat Rakhimov. But let me know what you think, or what you would like O'Shaquie Foster to do if he does get past Abraham Nova. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this fight and what you want the aftermath and what you expect the aftermath of that fight to be in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.